Good to see you, my friend.
Nice to see you, sir.
You know, it's interesting. This comes out, and all the conspiracy theories come out as to why we're not getting a certain bunch of those documents. I guess that'll never die, will it?
Well, I don't think it's going to die as long as we have a pusillanimous, that means cowardly,
Thank you.
CIA and State Department and whoever else is responsible. Because I think, look, the bottom line is, here's this guy, Lee Harvey Oswald. He's a communist. He's a communist sympathizer and a communist. He's an expert marksman. He has just spent a lot of time in Russia. He married a Russian woman whom people say is a KGB handler. He was in Cuba with Castro, the arch hater of Kennedy and the whole world. And then he comes back and he kills Kennedy. The lines are as clear as day. Cuba and Russia are connected with this in some big way, and somehow we never want to say it.
All right, well, outside of that, I mean, all right, do you get a sense, though, Ben, that we can't let go of the Oliver Stone thing? A lot of people just have a hard time thinking one guy could kill the most powerful person on the planet.
Well, he used a bullet to do it. He didn't do it with his bare hands. He used a gun and a bullet. And in those days, security was nowhere near as good as it is now.
That's right.
And he just happened to be in the neighborhood, and he saw the route map marked out in the newspaper, and he was able...
that comes up in a lot of these documents, that how clearly that was telegraphed to people.
That was clearly telegraphed to him. He had the motivation. He was an expert marksman while he was in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And yes, he could have done it. And the fact that he's the most powerful man in the world doesn't mean a thing. His brain is still a brain encased in a thin skull. One bullet can penetrate.
No, but you know what I'm saying? We can't fathom how just some common schmo.
He's not a common schmo. He's an agent. He was an agent of an international communist conspiracy.
You didn't let me finish my question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon.
Here?
I beg your pardon.
I'm not done.
I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. Unlike Gasparino, I beg your pardon.
Do you then think that we're going to get anything here that will come closer to at least saying that Oswald had help? Not help in committing the act, financing it, planning it, strategizing it? What do you think?
I don't think he needed much financing. He just bought a mail-order rifle for a few dollars. He lived in modest circumstances with his wife Marina. I don't think he needed much help doing it. I think he was he was a kind of clever guy, and he had been briefed on how to answer questions. There's a very, very good book called Legend about this whole story and about how the Russians worked it out and how the Russians worked it out with Cuba. And to me, that has always seemed a dispositive answer. Now, don't get me wrong. I am a great fan of Russia. They helped us. They were the main instrumentality in defeating Adolf Hitler. We owe them an eternal debt of gratitude. But let's not kid ourselves. They consider...
Well, they only did that when Hitler turned on that.
Right, that's true. You're exactly completely correct. Now, they're as treacherous as sons of bitches as there could ever be. I hope I'm allowed to use that phrase on TV. Well, I hope I'm allowed to. Well, I might be shot afterwards for doing that, but you never know. Anyway, we owe them a lot, but then on the other hand, I think they were furiously mad at us over the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think they're furiously mad. Castro has always hated the United States. You know that Castro said to Khrushchev, look, I want you to start shooting off those nuclear missiles at the United States. And to which Khrushchev said, look, the United States is going to level your island and turn it into a big glass parking lot. And apparently Castro said, it's okay, it's worth it, I'd rather do it than not do it. I still want to attack the United States. That's how nutty a guy he was.
Do you think people knew at the time? I mean, there's all these sorts, and there might be this legend, urban legend, after all these years, but there is this story that comes out in these documents, Ben, about a British newspaper getting a heads up from someone, something big is going to go down in the United States. So they don't specify.
I don't
assassinate the president.
Yeah,
then there was that weird quote of trading dip on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. What do you think of all that stuff?
I think that's all coincidence, has nothing to do with anything. But I think, look,
there's a probably never asked the question that it was like a waste. I thought that was kind of intriguing.
You always have an amazing gift for cutting me down to size.
No, but I mean, you don't find that curious? Like,
what I find curious is there's a line. It's a straight line. Crazy guy, Lee Harvey Oswald, communist, hates the United States, hates Kennedy, goes to Russia, gets training in how to create a fake backstory called a legend, He goes to Cuba, gets further training and motivation, comes back to America, kills Kennedy. What? The communists aren't involved? He just did it because he had a bad day at work? Are you kidding me?
Do you remember that day?
Very, very well. I was alive then. You weren't
No, I'm curious.
Then.
Like at the time when it happened, when it went down,
I remember it very well.
Tell me about it.
I was a student at Columbia here in New York City, where we are right now.
Sure.
I had just come back from class. I went to my student mail room where a clerk dispensed our messages and letters, and he said that Kennedy's just been shot. And a bunch of people were standing around saying, good, he deserved it. But I don't think any of them thought he'd been shot fatally. I was a columnist and correspondent for the Columbia radio station, KCRW. And I went over there and I started seeing this stuff coming over the wire. And somebody said to me, he's got Addison's disease. If his blood pressure reaches a certain level, he dies no matter what. And
there was a lot about his health that we didn't know, right?
Yeah, at the time, including his sexual health, which apparently was very, very good. And at the time, bang, next thing you know, they saying he's dead. And so I remember it very, very well, and I cried bitter tears because although I was a Republican, I was not old enough to vote, so I couldn't have voted. But I found him an inspirational character. He pulled that PT boat through the water, basically holding a rope in his teeth and pulling the boat and pulling several men to safety. He was a hero. He was a brave guy.
No, he was an amazing individual. Is it your sense now, looking at what he represents, would life be different? I mean, what was cut down that day? There are a lot of people. Feel free to take that call if you got it.
No, I'm not going to take that call.
Sure, just take it.
It's from my broker.
No, okay, good. I thought it was Charles Payne recommending stocks.
It's from my broker telling me what I should do if you call me.
Okay. Do you think his death changed Vietnam, changed course, and all of that?
I think his death set in motion a guy, LBJ, who said to himself, look, I am a big, tall Texan. No little Oriental Asian fellow is going to beat me in Vietnam, and I'm going to pour in as many troops as it takes to win that war.
So JFK would not have done that?
I don't think so. I think JFK would have been more moderate about it. JFK was more secure about his manhood than LBJ was.
That's interesting. Also on tax cuts, a lot of Republicans, this administration is using him, JFK, as an example.
But JFK did not get his tax cuts through. It was Johnson
LBJ
who got his,
after the fact.
LBJ, by the way, LBJ is one of the most underrated presidents in the history of the United States. And the person who could really learn a lot from reading about LBJ is none other than Donald Trump. LBJ knew how to manipulate the Congress and get them to do his will in a way that no other president probably ever has. And a very, very good lesson for Donald Trump could be gotten from a book called Master of the Senate about Johnson when he was head of the Senate.
Yeah, but there was that little issue of the Vietnam War.
Yes, well, no. And yet he got so much done.
You're right.
He got all the Civil Rights Acts.
You're right, Don.
The great civil rights hero of the United States of America for all eternity, except for Abraham Lincoln, was LBJ.